doing well. Welcome back to my ASMR channel for the next installment of the Do You Believe series. So today we are going to focus on one of North America's most famous stories, and that is the legend of Bigfoot. So I hope you're able to relax and come with me on a journey through the history of Bigfoot. So I have some notes down here which I'll be referring to if you see me look down quite a bit. But just a quick disclaimer, this will focus on the North American Bigfoot and more specifically the United States of America for the most part, and not Canada as well. But interestingly, most cultures around the globe have a version of a story like Bigfoot that involves wild men in the forest, or things like the Yeti or the abominable snowman, which is said to lurk in Nepal and the Himalayas. But for this story we're going to focus on what I know to be the most popular Bigfoot, and I thought for this video I would have my water bottle handy which has a photo of Bigfoot going for a surf. So let's get started. Where did Bigfoot come from? Where did this originate from? So in America there seems to be two main schools of thought about where Bigfoot originated from. One of them is that the legend of Bigfoot was brought over by European colonisers who migrated from Europe over to the North America in what is now New York and Pennsylvania. And the reason for that is that European folklore has ancient tales of wild men in the forest, wild beasts or hairy beasts in the woods, and there was very specific words that they would use to describe these stories. And when the European settlers settled in North America, there started to be documented reports using that similar terminology, and so some researchers have deduced that that may be a likely cause of where this Bigfoot legend came from. However, when you look at Native American cultures, the majority of them in some regard will have a story that is similar to what we know now as Bigfoot. And according to a famed anthropologist called David Daglin, there are stories in indigenous cultures that predate what we would know to be modern Bigfoot by thousands of years, and these are documented stories about hair-covered creatures in the forests. The stories, for the most part, in Native American culture seem to be prevalent in the Pacific Northwest, but they are found throughout cultures regionally in the United States. And there's one tradition or one story that focuses on a creature called, I think it's Sonokwa, I hope I'm saying that correctly, who apparently stole children and food. And this is thought to be the predecessor to what we now think is Bigfoot. This one story seems to be directly linked to what we now would consider Bigfoot. But interestingly, there was a rock found, a painted rock, in the Tool River Indian Reservation, which had paintings on it that depicted large hairy men, and it was called The Family, and that was 1,000 years old. So that predated European colonisation as well. But what has popularised Bigfoot to what we know it to be today? So when I think of Bigfoot, I think of misty forests in the Pacific Northwest, and I think of a certain look, you know, tall, brown, kind of looks like a grizzly bear but walks like a man. So where did these stories come from? And there's been a few stories throughout history that have really popularised Bigfoot as we know him or her to be. And one of the biggest stories that first came out that really launched the idea of Bigfoot into the public perception was in the early 1920s. There was a group of gold prospectors who were panning for gold in near Mount St Helens, and they had been out panning for gold. They'd rented a small cabin to stay in as well, and they were out panning for gold when they said that they were attacked by a group of gorilla men, and one of the men had a rifle on him, and he actually took out the rifle and shot one of the gorilla men, and then the gorilla men ran off, but they had been apparently trying to attack them. So they continued panning for gold afterwards, and then as night fell they returned to their cabin, and they said that they were there for a couple of hours when they started to hear noises outside, growling noises, grunts, and then things started to be thrown at the cabin, and they reported having massive boulders thrown at them. The windows were smashed, and apparently the man who had the rifle who shot Bigfoot, or gorilla man, sorry, he was knocked unconscious by one of those. So these men the next day actually reported this to the US Forest Service, and they sent rangers out there, but they said that they couldn't find any evidence that this had even happened at all. But it's almost passed into folklore, and in fact the canyon that they were panning for gold in has actually been renamed Ape Canyon in a nod to its history, which I found quite interesting. I thought that was quite funny. So far to date in the United States of America, there has been over 23,000 reported sightings of Bigfoot, and I'll post a little infographic here, but the majority of them are kind of around the Pacific Northwest, so like Oregon, Seattle, California. But as you can see, there are quite a few sightings in places like Texas, Florida. One of the most famous sightings, and I couldn't do this video without talking about it, is the Robert Patterson and Bob Ginlin video. Sorry, I'm just butchering the names today. I couldn't not talk about this video because this to me is what I think of when I think of Bigfoot. It has passed into folklore, legend, and it's the video that they recorded, and this was when they had been out on the 20th of October 1967 in Bluff Creek, California. Now these two men were self-professed Bigfoot enthusiasts, and they had actually went out that day to film a Bigfoot docudrama, and coincidentally happened to catch Bigfoot on film. I think this video is hilarious. I love it. It's, to me, some people might disagree, to me it is very obviously a man in a suit. But I just love it. I think it's magical. I think it's so fun. And this was a very big deal at the time. And to be fair, there are people still today who think, what if this is real? But it showcases Bigfoot walking through the forest, and he turns back to look at the camera, and I just think it's just perfect. It's just what I think of when I think of Bigfoot. It's so funny. But that again launched the concept of Bigfoot into the stratosphere, where that became global news worldwide. And just on a personal note, I was raised in a family with a father who will watch any Bigfoot documentary going. If there's something on the TV, he's watching it. And so we've always grown up, strangely, we're a family from Scotland, but we've always grown up with this really niche interest in the North American Bigfoot. And so I must have seen that clip about 50 times. But you know what? It's absolutely fine. But there are also some other notable Bigfoot sightings that I've wrote down as well. So the first one, and I'll insert pictures. The first one is the Johnstown photo from Pennsylvania, and this was taken in 1980, and it appears to show a huge footprint. Not a bear, not a human, yet to be determined. So the interesting thing about this photo is that it actually hasn't been disproven. It's not proven to be fake. It seems like these people were out, and I think they were excavating a site and they found this footprint, and it seems to be legit. It's not, took photos of it, people have studied the photos, and there doesn't seem to be any evidence that it was tampered with, or, you know, like a person's went in there and compacted the mud and made it look that way. So I thought that one was quite interesting. Another one is a story from a man called Michael Green. Now, Michael Green was a former US tank army commander, and at the time he worked as a fraud investigator, and he had went camping, and he was alone in his tent. He was solo camping, and he said during the night he could hear lots of noises outside of his tent, things like scurrying around, growling. And I believe the next night he went out and he set up a camera. This was in the early 2000s, and he had a camera with him that he tied to a tree and set it up. And in the video that he found, it looks to be something walking in the dark through the forest. And he has been interviewed multiple times with people saying this is a hoax, this is fake. And I believe he said something along the lines of, "I don't give a damn if you believe me or not. I know what I saw, and I believe I caught a Bigfoot." So he seems to really stand by it. He seems to be like, I know what I experienced, I know what I saw. And another interesting story is that of the Florida skunk man, and this is quite interesting if you go on and Google this. But there's videos being filmed around the Florida Everglades that appear to show something like Bigfoot in the forest, which does sound surprising, but the Everglades, for as hot as it is, does have a population of black bears and different monkeys as well that live there. So there are quite a lot of stories, there's quite a lot of sightings, and when you go back through the history of Bigfoot in the United States, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of reported sightings, and these can be, you know, people who've been out on a hike and they've been filming something and just happen to notice upon a rewatch that they've caught something in the background of their video. It can be people who've went out purposefully to try and see if they can find Bigfoot, and they set up cameras and they're out there in really remote places for stretches of days at a time trying to find Bigfoot. It can be people filming a hilltop from a distance and seeing something just slowly walk by. So there's lots of different sightings of Bigfoot, and if you're anything like me, you might think, well, what else could this be? Let's look at the evidence here. So some of the most commonly reported reasons for people thinking they've seen Bigfoot are misidentification of bears. So bears, when they're injured, will stand bipedal, so they'll stand on their 2 feet. And when a black bear stands on its 2 feet, it can reach between 5 and 7 foot tall. And when a grizzly bear does it, they can be between 8 and 9 foot tall. And I can see how on a dark, hazy, wintry night, when you're alone, you're already a bit on edge, you're in the middle of nowhere, camping alone, if you've seen a grizzly bear standing on its 2 legs in the dark, you would go insane. I'd be thinking it was Bigfoot too. But commonly, quite a lot of these sightings can be attributed to just seeing bears on their 2 legs, And that's actually leads me into another point, which is that a lot of Bigfoot enthusiasts say that they think Bigfoot might be a nearly extinct line of an Asian bear called Gigantopithecus. And I'll insert a photo here as well so you can see what that looks like. But Gigantopithecus was a great ape that was found in Asia, I think commonly around the Himalayas, around about that area, and they have found fragments of Gigantopithecus bones, but Bigfoot enthusiasts say that this is a sort of evolved version of this, which when, you know, millions of years ago we were one landmass, when it is split, this species has branched off into what is now North America, but bone fragments have only ever been found in Asia, and the bone fragments that they have found point towards Gigantopithecus being quadrupedal, so walking on all fours. Could be something like bears, where if they're injured they may have stood on two legs, but there's also been no evidence that Gigantopithecus ever made it into North America. There's been no bone fragments found. In response to that, Bigfoot enthusiasts will say, how many times have you seen a mountain lion skeleton, or, you know, a bobcat skeleton? Nature takes care of things pretty quickly. Fair enough. You know. But other reasons as well, and this one just, it surprised me but didn't surprise me at the same time. So people have also been misidentified as Bigfoot, and there's one particular story where a group of Bigfoot enthusiasts were out hiking together and they were on the hunt for Bigfoot, so they were planning on staying over in the forest camping, and you know, it's dark, they're together, they're hyped up, they're getting each other psyched up as well, and they were out there looking, and a couple of them had branched off into different groups and taken different trails. One of the men mistook another one of his friends who was also with him in the hunting party, mistook him for Bigfoot and shot him. Which, I know it's not funny, but it's just incredulous, I think. And then there was another story, I think in Northern Carolina, near Greenville, and a man had been seen walking about, and he was quite flamboyant. He wore like huge furs. I think he was a bit of a nomad. He lived in the forest, and so he didn't look like he was just popping out to go to the shops. He apparently was seen by passers-by who thought he was Bigfoot and also tried to shoot him, to the point where Greenville Police Department had to put out a press release to ask people officially not to shoot Bigfoot if you see them, for fear that it might be a person. And I just find those stories just insane. Just insane. But I can understand, you get worked up into a frenzy, you don't know what to look for, your brain's trying to make sense of something that you're seeing that you can't quite understand yet. So I do understand that sometimes your brain is working against you, but I just find those stories quite amazing, to be honest. Another reason people have given is potentially feral humans. Feral humans exist, humans that were never socialised, who have lived in the wilderness all the time, who won't be getting haircuts, the men won't be shaving their beards, and that could also be a potential reason for Bigfoot sightings as well. The general scientific belief is that Bigfoot doesn't exist, and that a lot of the sightings that have been reported have actually been either hoaxed or misidentification of something, be it bear, human, feral human, or frankly, similar to what I said in the Loch Ness video, people like the intimacy that comes along with it, and they just get swept up in the craziness of it all. I think, in my opinion, just to round off the video again, I want so badly to believe in Bigfoot. I would love nothing more than to go on a camping expedition around the Pacific Northwest to try and find Bigfoot. And again, we know the rule: if you find Bigfoot, you don't tell anyone, you let them live in peace. But I love watching Bigfoot movies, I love watching Bigfoot TV documentaries as well. I just find the whole thing really interesting, and as I said in one of my last videos, I really just want to believe. I'm not sure if I do, but the want to believe is very strong. And you know, I'm quite a rational person, so whenever I do hear stories, I'm like, oh, it's probably this or it's probably that. But listen, if I could put my backpack on my tent and just go out there with my dad looking for Bigfoot, I would 100% do it. So what do you think? Do you believe in Bigfoot? Do you think the 23,000 sightings that there have been are all fake, are all misidentifications? Or do you think maybe there is some truth in it? Do you think that maybe Bigfoot does exist, but it's kept on the down low, you know? We know how humans can be. Is there a chance that if Bigfoot was real and they confirmed it, that people would just go out and try and kill him? Who knows? My lights totally died there, but I just wanted to pop this on to the end of the video to say thank you so much for listening. I hope you find it interesting. It's something I really enjoy talking about. Surprisingly, in Scotland you don't get loads of opportunities to talk about the North American Bigfoot. But I hope you find it relaxing, and let me know if there's any other topics you would like me to cover or anything at all. I really appreciate